You are in the right place. This is a session about cultivating authority. So I'm glad that everybody is here. Hello, LinkedIn Live. We're going to get started here probably in about 30 seconds or so. Allie, do we have anybody else who's trying to get in?
It looks like this is just us for now. We have two
It's just
on
us. It's
Zoom
just,
and
okay,
seven
well,
on LinkedIn Live.
okay, great. Well, this will be a really fun and intimate session. So, hi and welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deb Gabor. I'm an author. I've written three what I think are super fun books about branding and strategy. First one is called Branding is Sex. I've got another one called Irrational Loyalty. And all of the content that's coming from this presentation is from my book Personality. So here's some of my books if you want to look those up. And I don't know why my slides will not advance. There we go. And then I've got some new stuff. I mentioned Personality, Cultivate Your Human Authority to Ignite Irrational Brand Loyalty. And that's what we'll be talking about today. And also a report on irrational loyalty, which I can share information with you if you want to get that. But the first thing I want to talk about is this concept called irrational loyalty. And so in my mind, irrational loyalty is this condition where people are so indelibly bonded to your brand that they'd feel like they were cheating on you if they were to choose an alternative. And I'd love to hear from anybody who's online here, brands that you feel like you have irrational loyalty for. So for instance, I have everything iThingy. I have Apple everything as far as you can look, even though I know that there is other technology out there that is far superior to my iPhone. I know that there are things that deliver the same functional benefits. They're easier to get. They cost far less than the iPhone. I wouldn't be caught dead using an Android device. Are there brands that you're irrationally loyal to? Anyone? Feel free to just type it into the chat box or shout it out. People on LinkedIn Live, you can put it in the comments. But irrational loyalty is that condition where people are so indelibly bonded to a brand, they'd feel like they were cheating on it if they were to choose an alternative. And this is where all of the margin lies. Brands that engender this condition of irrational loyalty, they scale more profitably with more focus. They have bigger lasting footprints. They're just bigger brands. And I actually have some research that shows that. So brands that have irrational loyalty are among the best brands in the world. And how do they get this irrational loyalty? This is the sum total of everything that I do and everything that I talk about. But these are basically the four things that you need to know in order to turn your brand into a brand that has the characteristics of the best brands in the world. Number one, best brands in the world, they aim their brand at a singular, ideal, archetypal customer. It's one human being. Even if you sell to other companies, you're a B2B brand, people buy things from people. And the ideal customer, like I said, it's an archetype that represents the best psychographic, attitudinal, behavioral characteristics of the singular human being who is most highly predictive of your success. So they aim their brand at that one person. They become part of that person's identity to the point that we have people out there walking around the world saying, I'm a Coke person or I'm a Pepsi person. I'm an Apple person. I'm a PC person, right? The best brands in the world become part of a person's identity. The best brands in the world, they're not just different. They're unique. They're truly singular. So when we look at the top most valuable global brands in this entire world, in the entire universe of where we are calculating the value of brands, we see that those best brands in the world are unique. There is no one else like them. Those are brands like Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook. There are other brands that offer similar functional and emotional benefits, but the brands that are worth the most are truly singular in the way that they can't be imitated or they can't be replaced. And then finally, the best brands in the world are not about them. They make their customer the hero in their own story. What does this mean? Not during this conversation, but at some point after this, I want you to open up your company website. And if the first word on the website is either your company name or the word we, you're doing it wrong. The best brands in the world make the customer the hero in their own website. So these are the four characteristics of the best brands in the world. Everything I write about, everything I talk about is really the underlying methodology here. And the best brands in the world are the ones that engender irrational loyalty. Now, my company did a study last year to really understand what are the drivers of irrational loyalty? Where does this come from? And these were all of the little levers that are pulled emotionally within people's hearts that make them bond to a brand in a way that they would feel like the brand is something that can't be replaced for them. The most important things for you to take away from this are number one, what we call the indispensability index. So what we did was we analyzed, like, does a brand just have to be present? Do people just need to be aware of it? Just does it need to be there? It was often thought in the world of branding that the number one predictor of brand success was if people could mention your brand off the top of their head. Also, there's this notion, I don't know if any of you use Net Promoter Score or NPS to measure brand health, but that is a bullshit metric. It's backwards looking. It assumes that someone has bought and used your brand, and it assumes that they've recommended it to someone else. It's not an entirely complete measure of brand health. But we looked at all of these different aspects to understand what is the health of a brand. And then we did some additional analysis to learn, like, really what are the innate drivers of this feeling of irrational loyalty, which makes people have like cultish relationships with brand. And the most important things that we learned was that the brands that engendered the most irrational loyalty, that those brands were indispensable to the people who were using them, meaning they became part of the person's identity, they elevated their lifestyle in some way, and they were seen as irreplaceable in their minds. So your job as a brand is to create this condition of irrational loyalty, and just think about, how do we make ourselves indispensable to our customers, where they feel like the brand is part of who they are, they have this extreme bonding with the brand to the point that nothing else can replace it. So I talk about irrational loyalty because one of the most important things that we learned about it is that on average, brands in similar categories that have irrational loyalty versus brands in those same categories that don't, they make on average 40% more revenue than the brands that don't have irrational loyalty. Let me restate that in a more memorable and more coherent way. If you're a brand where a lot of irrational loyalty exists, people feel like you're irreplaceable, they have you as part of their identity structure, you have bonded with them deeply and emotionally, those brands are up to 40% bigger revenue wise than brands in the same category that don't. So we did a lot of analysis of brands that were in the same categories. For instance, we looked at Spectrum and Xfinity, both brands that are in the same category. They basically deliver the same kinds of services. Xfinity is a brand that has lots of irrational loyalty, where Spectrum is a brand that customers love to hate, a necessary evil. Xfinity makes on average 40% more revenue than Spectrum. The next frontier for this, of course, is to look at how much more profitability you get from being a brand that engenders irrational loyalty. And irrational loyalty is tied up in this idea of authority. So you guys are probably wondering about, I tuned into a presentation that's all about, oh, you have so much content now, you want to be an authority, you want to monetize that content. Where does this fit in? I talk about irrational loyalty and I tie it to authority just to demonstrate the importance of authority in elevating a brand. What do I mean here about a brand? That's the brand of your company. It could be your personal brand. It could be a brand of an organization or an initiative or a nonprofit that you're involved in. It could be the brand of a movement you're trying to start or you're trying to advance. And authority is definitely tied directly into this idea of irrational loyalty. When we did our study last year to really quantify this irrational loyalty relationship, we asked some questions to understand, like, what is the role of authority in helping create irrational loyalty? And here is a list of some of the things that give a brand irrational loyalty, and all of these things are tied directly to individual human authority. So things like when people say choosing blank brand is always the right decision for me, or blank brand makes me feel like a hero, blank brand represents my values, it says things that are important to me, it helps me experience the world more clearly. Products don't do that. Brands do that. And all of these attributes are tied directly to authority. So, what is authority? Authority is building an authentic personal brand that attracts legions of irrationally loyal fans and then sets you up with portable authority that you can use to create change. And we'll talk a little bit about what do I mean by portable authority. But authority is building this authentic personal brand that attracts legions of irrationally loyal fans. I talk to people about authority being the humanization of your brand, really being the walking human billboard for your brand. So I'm going to tell everybody a quick story here because I think that this is important, and it kind of describes, like, why did I get into this business of authority? Why is this something that I think is important to people? So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really proud of myself because I had cultivated a business where I had, my strategy and marketing agency running over here where I was not operating in the day to day. This is a goal that a lot of entrepreneurs have. They don't want to be in the day to day goings on of the company, and they want to do other things. And over probably the 6 years before the pandemic, I had established a really solid media, speaking, storytelling, writing, book platform where I was passionately sharing irrational loyalty with the world because I do what I do. I do brand strategy because I believe that when you build better brands, it makes better companies. Better companies become more sustainable, more scalable, more profitable. Those are better for economies, and healthy economies are better for people. And so I had established a terrific platform where I was spending really most of my time not working in my business, but going around the world and evangelizing this notion of irrational loyalty to the world. Well, here comes the pandemic, and basically my entire platform had been taken out right from underneath me. And I had lost my ability to actually go and be face to face with people and share this message. We were sharing lots of things on Zoom. And Ami Kassar from Multifunding, whose company is the sponsor of this webinar, and I and a bunch of other people like us, we thought, well, you know what? This is a time where we can't be out there being paid to speak at conferences and travel around the world and do speaking engagements and things like that. There's never been a better time than now to share our authentic, meaningful information with other people with the sole purpose of helping others and elevating them in their own lives, in their own businesses. And here's the really important thing, without asking for anything in return. So at the beginning of the pandemic, my whole speaking platform went away. I lost the ability to do a lot of the things that were the things that brought me money. Also, I had my company, which was flailing a little bit, like a lot of us were doing at the beginning of the pandemic. And I thought, what can I do? I'm going to just share information with other people. I'm not going to ask for anything from them in return. I was also working on a book that was about AI in marketing. And the working title was Why AI Can't Solve AI's Marketing Problem. And at the time, I felt like it was really irrelevant. So I scrapped the whole thing. And I just started teaching people how to connect with their customers, especially at a time that was very, very turbulent and they weren't able to serve their customers. And so what was really interesting is during that time, by giving and giving and giving generously to anybody who needed my help, I did tons of free consulting. I did tons of free speaking. I hosted my own webinars, which we called the Debinars. My community grew huge. It grew from like 1,200 people to tens of thousands of people and subscribers who were leaning forward to get more and more information from me. And lo and behold, the craziest thing happened. Those people who I had cultivated into a community that I was just serving selflessly started to lean forward and tell me what they wanted to buy. And it wasn't B2B technology and professional services, strategy and marketing services and research. It was they wanted to learn how to become me. So I scrapped the AI book and I was like, I need to share the story of how I got to this place and how I monetize my own authority. I need to share that with other people. And that's where this whole authority marketing thing was born. So I like to share that with people because I'm kind of my own case study and I was the inspiration for, Why should I be teaching other people to cultivate their authority? So I created this little recipe for like what is authority. So this is my recipe card for the authority bake, Deb Gabor's authority bake. And the ingredients that go into cultivating authority are knowledge, expertise, experience, values, beliefs, point of view, and passion. And the idea here is that you are combining all of these things, your knowledge, your expertise. So, what you know, what you've experienced, what you are especially good at. And then you layer in your values and beliefs. My values and beliefs are branding makes better companies make healthy economies are better for people. My beliefs are also this idea of irrational loyalty, that business success lies in the ability to cultivate legions of fans to your brand and continue to serve them through your actions. So you layer all that stuff in and you aim it at that singular, ideal, archetypal customer that I talked about at the beginning. And then you add in a dash of your unique point of view and you add some passion to let it rise, right? It's really, really cheesy, but this really is the sum total of how a person creates authority. And not everybody deserves authority, but those of us who are business leaders, those of us who are out there sharing content with the world, whether that's a blog, whether that's an email newsletter subscription, whether you're doing speaking engagements, or you have a book, or you want to write a book, whether you work for a company, you work for yourself, whatever it is, you're a coach, you're an expert, whatever, you need to cultivate authority because it does these things for you. It humanizes your brand and it makes it stand out as unique. Remember, I said that the best brands in the world are not just different, they're unique. Many brands are unique because of the person who is at the helm. And it doesn't have to be a ginormous brand in order to have authority. It can be a small brand. Authority also helps you enter conversations that you previously were not part of. Back in 2016, when I wrote my first book, I wish that I had been more intentional and more direct about how I wanted that book to serve me in my career and how I wanted it to establish authority for me. I was just so passionate about sharing this idea of irrational loyalty with other people because I really, really felt like they needed it. I had no idea what that book was going to do for me in this idea of entering conversations that I previously couldn't. I'm an expert on branding. Somehow I managed to, in the winter of 2017, get into conversations about all of these massive brand disasters. Among them, I don't know if you guys remember the story of United Airlines that pulled that poor Dr. David Dow off an airplane and like beat him senseless and he was passed out. And a customer took a video and it was shared on Twitter 11 million times. We never even heard from United Airlines for 48 hours. And when we did, it was in a 140 character tweet written by lawyers that blamed the victim, all in passive language, et cetera, et cetera. I did, over the course of the 2 weeks during and after that event, I did over 140 media interviews with publications like the Washington Post and the New York Times, but also broadcast outlets like NPR and CNBC, where I got to share my expertise about how that was going to impact the United Airlines brand. It was completely unmanaged. I had no way to use that authority and those conversations that I got into. I didn't have a system in place to be able to use that to monetize my authority and actually make money off of my expertise. And I wish that I had. Now, going back, I've written 2 more books. I'm working on a 4th right now. Like, I've learned this authority business by trial and error, what works, what doesn't work, and I'm teaching it to other people. Additionally, you need to cultivate authority because it helps grow your brand. When people know who you are, they know who your brand is. And this is one of the primary ways that you can transcend the functional and emotional benefits of your services, again, by humanizing the brand. And so why is this important? It's important because there's real live brain science behind this. And when I give talks on branding, we always talk about the human brain and the brain science of branding. But the brain is made up of roughly these 3 parts. The part that's in the red, which is sort of in this area right here on the outside, this is the neocortex. This is the part of the brain that controls rational thinking. It does math. It processes language. It helps you distinguish one thing from another. This is really all about rational thinking. Then back here, here, which is represented in kind of this ugly gold color, this is what we refer to as the fight or flight mechanism. This is the automatic response part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that when you get stressed out does things like produces cortisol, or when you're scared. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling that your hair is all standing on end. And really that's a psychological and neurological response to fear that's actually your body increasing its surface area and attempting to make itself bigger to fend off someone who is trying to prey on you. Then deep in the gooey core of the brain, which is represented by that yellow thing there, that is the limbic system, and that's the part of the brain that talks about the why. That's the thing that distinguishes right from wrong. It's the thing that questions things. It's where emotions are managed. Which part of the brain do you think branding is concerned with? Well, I'll answer that for you since we don't have the opportunity for you guys to raise your hand and say, you know, but branding goes straight to the why part of the brain. And I think people like Simon Sinek and his Start with Why talk and the golden circle and all that kind of stuff, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People need to feel something to do something. And a brand and the authority associated with that brand is something that activates that gooey core of the brain. That's important because 98% of what your customers or your audience's brains are doing, 98% of what their brains are doing, happens outside of their awareness. What do I mean? That means that when you are talking to another person or you are marketing to another person, you're sending an email to another person, you only have 2% of their brain to work with, because the other 98% of their brain is doing things like digesting their lunch or metabolizing the booze they drank last night or helping them sit up straight or helping them circulate their blood, right? You have 2% of their brain to work with. And the research has indicated that 95% of decision making happens outside of the rational part of the brain. So do the math there. You have 2% of people's brains, 95% of decision making happens outside of the rational part of the brain. You have to make people feel something to do something. If you don't believe me, go read the research of this guy, Dr. Antonio Damasio, a very, very smart brain researcher. I believe he's still at Harvard University. And he studied people who had broken limbic systems, people who had literally broken the feeling part of the brain. These people couldn't even facilitate the most basic decisions, such as turkey or chicken on my sandwich for lunch, or paper or plastic, or the most paralyzing decision, which was what time do I go in and see Dr. Damasio for my brain exam, right? People need to feel something to do something. Your brand and your authority is what give people the feels. That's why this is so important. So I'm going to give you a quick quiz so that you really understand what I'm talking about with regard to authority. So get ready to type into the chat box, or even if you have your sound enabled or your camera enabled, to shout these things out. Who's the CEO of Tesla? Anybody? Just type it in the chat box there. All right. Elon Musk. There you go. Who's the CEO of Toyota? NFI. You guys know what NFI stands for, right? No effing idea. All right. Who's the founder of Virgin Group? Just type it in the chat there. This is easy, right? Richard Branson, Sir Richard. Who's the founder? Founder of Delta Airlines. I think we know who the CEO is right now, and chairman, Ed Bastian, because of this debacle with changing their loyalty programs. Founder of Delta Airlines. NFI. Founder of Apple. This one's easy. There's books written about him, movies, et cetera, et cetera. CEO of Samsung. Anybody know? Founder of Samsung? Nope, nobody knows. All right, founder of Salesforce. You guys know who this is? One of my favorites. This is Mark Benioff, founder of Zoho, NFI. You see what I'm getting at here? Founder of Twitter. The founder of Twitter is Jack Dorsey. Nowadays, who has more authority, the founder of Twitter or the owner of Twitter? Elon Musk again, founder of Instagram. I don't know who the founder of Instagram is, but I sure know that they're owned by Meta. And this goes on and on. The founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, is just up here over and over again. The founder of BAE Systems, in the same business here. This quiz illustrates for us the people on the left. These are people who have established a footprint of authority, not always positive authority, not always intentional authority, not always earned authority, but these are people of authority. The people on the right are folks we really don't even know who they are. So hopefully that illustrates authority. So now let's get into like, how is authority created? It starts with something that is referred to by psychologists as the norm of reciprocity. Basically, the norm of reciprocity, it's a psychological condition where the idea is if I give to you and I give to you and I give to you and I give to you, then you feel somehow obligated to me at some point, whether I ask you or not, right? You're like, yeah, that person is really, really generous to me. I want to give to them. This is why we lean forward and we do things. A lot of us as business leaders and experienced business owners, we do mentorship. We're really not looking for anything in return, right? It's a karma elevator. Well, it naturally creates this world of reciprocity where people want to lean forward when you've been generous to them. It's a psychological state. And there are three different kinds of reciprocity. The first is generalized, which is just what I talked about here, which is you give and give and give, and people see you as a giving person and as a good person. And therefore, if you ever asked them for anything in return, and I'm not saying that you would or you should, but if you ever ask them for anything in return, they would return that. Paul Reiners is a good friend of mine. He's here. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. Every time he shows up to a thing for me, every time we get to have a conversation where he helps me sort of unfurl some of the crazy ideas in my head, I keep that. I store that in my emotional bank account. And that goes well into the positive to the point that when Paul is like, hey, you know what? I need a favor. I never think twice, right? Because he has given his attention and his experience share and his warmth and his support to me. That is generalized reciprocity. That's basically what it is. It's just there. Balanced reciprocity is I give you something and it's of extreme value to you, and I'm looking for something in return from you. So if any of you ever do any kind of marketing that involves, say, lead magnets, this operates on the principle of balanced reciprocity, meaning I'm giving you this great report, or I'm giving you this job aid, or I'm giving you this checklist. And my expectation is that I've given you something of incredible value, which is behind my gated content wall. I'm asking you for your email address. Have you ever signed up to download something that you wanted badly enough that you were willing to give your email address? This is the world of balanced reciprocity. The third category, negative reciprocity, is I do something for you and then I'm going to market the hell out of you and I'm going to disrupt our relationship. And here's what I have to say about that. How many of you have registered for a thing and then been beyond bombarded with communication from the brand that wasn't useful, helpful content, but promotions asking you to buy their stuff? It feels gross, right? It's like the equivalent of a dick pic on Tinder when this happens, right? Negative reciprocity is killing authority. And I talk to brands every day that are like, ooh, 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 if I get somebody's email address, does that mean that I can send them my promotion and give them my coupon and ask them to buy my thing? I want to just market to them and throw a billboard in front of them with every email I send them, every text message I send them. Negative reciprocity is killing authority. There have been research studies done out there about things like email marketing and a decrease in positive feelings about brands based on the frequency and the quality of the emails that they're receiving. So I want you to look through this list and think about, do you want to use general and balanced reciprocity to establish authority and actually get something from people in return? Here are 10 signs that you are ready to be an authority. You want to see change and you want to have other people participate with you. You know who that ideal archetypal customer is. You are ready to do the work. It takes a lot to do this stuff. I am telling you, it takes a lot to create content or give generously of your expertise to lots and lots of people a lot of the time, till it gets to the point where people are leaning forward and telling you what they want to buy from you. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work to actually establish that footprint of authority and get that content out there. And it becomes, I'm one of the most high energy people I know in this world. And I get exhausted by trying to share generously content and expertise with other people. So you have to be ready to do the work. This is really important, this next point of view here. You want to disrupt the conventional way of thinking. There are a lot of people out there who are authorities. The pandemic gave everybody with a ring light and a microphone and a webcam the opportunity to go online and call themselves a coach or an expert or run a mastermind or whatever. The idea of what previously was authority, while it's been democratized by putting a lot of stuff on the internet, it has also lowered the bar for entry, but made it harder and harder for people who really do have the potential to establish authority to get out there and do that in a generous and monetizable way. The way to doing that is by disrupting the conventional way of thinking, because everybody else is out there, like they're all saying the same thing, doing the same thing. They're not even putting a unique spin on it. And interestingly, there are a lot of people out there making a lot of money with undifferentiated content. If you truly want to become an authority, you have to disrupt conventional ways of thinking. And therefore, you don't mind if people have opposing viewpoints and you embrace controversy. One of the biggest things that is so controversial in what I do is this idea of the ideal archetypal customer. I get people calling bullshit on me for this all the time. The idea that I could build a brand for a singular human being that I have constructed out of an archetype that I made, they just think that that's absolutely ridiculous. And that is not a way to grow a company. But the counterpoint to that is all of the clients that I've worked with over the past 20 years in my business, we have helped those brands scale more rapidly, more profitably, with more focus, build bigger brands through establishing irrational loyalty. That is a disruptive, controversial viewpoint, the idea that you can build a brand for one human being, right? The next thing here is that you can share vulnerably from your experiences. So I shared in my book Personality, I shared the story of like my business, my authority business, like got completely disrupted by the pandemic. I lost my livelihood. I lost my way to make money. Yeah, I was still monetizing through my company, but our revenues were down 50% during the first 6 months of the pandemic. I am not ashamed to share the story of the trials and tribulations and turbulence that I went through, not just at that time, but at other times. I shared with you earlier that I screwed up when I wrote my first book and I wasn't thoughtful and deliberate about how I wanted that book to serve me in my business and my life. You have to be willing to share vulnerably from your own experiences in order to really establish a platform of authority. And therefore, you have to be one of these people where shit just rolls off your back. If you want to write a book, you want to put out a blog, you want to become a speaker, be ready to read shitty reviews of your book. There was nothing more hurtful to me than when my first book came out and I read my first negative review. It was like a gut punch. It was as if somebody had reached into my heart, thrown my heart on the floor and stomped on it a bunch of times, and then put it back inside of me and pulled it out again, right? I had to develop a very thick skin because people were very, very intense in their negativity towards my point of view. So shit has to roll off your back. And then finally, number 10, you have to be willing to give your expertise away for free. This is really important. I made a huge mistake early on. Based on the success of Branding is Sex, I was like, you know what? I should take this methodology that I share for the price of a book, $15.99. I should take this and I should create an online platform where people can use my methodology and they can put their information into a thing and then it can generate like a whole brand strategy foundation and brand plan for them. Wow. Let me tell you, I invested $100,000 of my own money, both building the platform as well as the funnels and all of the assets that supported it. I put it out to the world and it was absolute crickets because I hadn't done the one most important thing, which is to actually give my expertise away for free. I hadn't built a foundation of trust. I hadn't cultivated a community and given to them before I asked them to throw down money to buy my shit. So now we talked about the why of authority. We talked about like what is authority, like why it's important to authority, the relationship between authority and a brand. Now let's talk about building and leveraging authority. I'm going to stop here real quick and see, Allie, have you had any questions or anything from anybody on LinkedIn Live? Does anybody who's watching on Zoom have a question?
There's no questions at the moment, but I know that the chat box is disabled. If you would like, just message me privately. I could promote you to panelist. You don't have to turn your video on if you would not like to, but I know some people like to leave comments or questions in the chat box. So just let me know and I will gladly do that for you.
All right. I appreciate your weighing in on that. So let me tell you what happened here. So the last time I did one of these webinars and I was like speaking out into the abyss and I wasn't able to have any interaction with the audience, I felt sad. And I asked Allie to help me figure out a way that we could let people talk if they wanted to. Cause like I ask questions and I do a quiz and I like, I go off of other people's energy. I guess like classic kind of extrovert behaviors. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I think I'm an extrovert or I'm an introvert in extrovert's clothing. Like I love this, but like I'm going to have to go to sleep for like 4 hours before I do my next thing after this is all over with. So apologies for kludgy technology, but we're dealing with it. All right. So let's get into establishing your authority brand. You need to determine your own unique brand of authority. Remember, I showed you the recipe for Deb Gabor's authority bake at the beginning, which was, your passions, your interests, your expertise, your knowledge layered in with your values and beliefs, and then sprinkled with a little bit of point of view. And then you bake it up and voila, you have authority. Well, that all emanates from an authority brand. And so real quick, I'm going to teach you what are the foundations of building a brand. Now, I talk about brand building in all of my books. Branding is Sex is sort of the how-to book. This is like, the primer on branding. Everything I talk about here is going to be there, but I'm going to give you like the baseline stuff. So if you're taking notes, this is stuff that you want to write down. I already talked to you about the idea, the 4 things that the best brands in the world do. Well, they aim their brand at a singular ideal archetypal customer. When you think about your authority, who do you want to be an authority for? Create a picture of who that ideal archetypal customer is. Who do you want to establish authority with? I make my clients draw it. I actually have them get out like the big Post-it paper, or in some cases we use like that big butcher paper that we all used in elementary school, and we trace a body and then we draw a picture of who this person is. The reason I have people draw it is because it exercises a different part of the brain than we use when we write a list of characteristics or we type things out with our mind and our fingers. But I want you to draw it. If this person is someone who is, let's say, they are an up and rising CEO of a mid-cap growth company in the manufacturing sector, and I just made this up, like draw a picture of that person. What's most important is not the demographics, but the psychographics. If that person is a good listener, draw them with big ears. If they have a big heart, draw them with a big heart. If they have a lot of money under their control, show them standing on a big pile of money. In my ideal customer archetype drawing, my ideal customer, her name is Lindsay. She's based on a client that I've worked with at 5 different companies. She's so irrationally loyal to my company's brand that when she negotiates her employment contract, she negotiates in there that she can hire us as her agency of record. So I also draw her with what I call Lindsay's golden shovel, which is a picture of a shovel that is the thing that she uses to dig for more budget when we come up with an innovative idea that she wants to do and she doesn't have budget for, she goes and she digs around the organization, right? You need to understand who are you aiming this at, because you are going to connect deep with them in their hearts. And then you build what I refer to as the brand values pyramid, which is the core DNA of the brand that permeates that person's heart, gets deeply into them and connects with them emotionally. So real quick, this is a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You guys remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? At the bottom, we have basic physiological and safety needs, essentially going to bed at night and not being afraid you're going to get eaten by a bear in your sleep, right? In the middle, you have affiliation needs, right? Being part of a group, being part of a society, belongingness, feeling like you are not an other. In the next level of Maslow's hierarchy are esteem needs. You have to have all of these things before you can build your self-esteem. And then finally, hopefully, as a human being, you get to this level of self-actualization. Being a fully self-actualized human being means that you are vibrating on a different plane, that you are reaching your fullest human potential. You are free of judgment for yourself and others. You are in total self-acceptance. You are your highest performing best, right? Brands, not just company brands, but personal brands have their own Maslow's hierarchy, which is this brand values pyramid. So we look at it this way. At the bottom of this pyramid are the functional benefits, which in Maslow's hierarchy are equivalent to the basic human needs, right? These are the things that have to be there or people will defect from the brand. So y'all, as a branding expert, the basic functional benefits are I've got to have a proven track record. I have to have a methodology. Everybody who does what I do has a shtick. I have to have one of those, right? I also have to have experience, know-how, education, a proven track record, a website, all of these different things. These are the basic functional benefits. If you're a technology company, these are speeds and feeds and bits and bytes and how many hops to a tier 1 network. These are the functional benefits. This is the stuff. If you're talking about a car, it has to have wheels and a steering wheel and a chassis and some mode of perambulation, right? If you're a mid-size luxury SUV, you also need leather seats, right? And you need a great stereo system and you need Apple CarPlay and all those kinds of things. You do not market on the basic functional benefits. That would be like selling ice cream by saying it's cold and it's sweet. Sounds dumb, right? But we do this stuff all the time, don't we? Go to your company website or go to your personal brand site and see if it like describes your resume, right? We do this all the time. These are just brands that meet the basic functional benefits. In the middle of the pyramid are the emotional benefits. What does the brand do? How does that make me feel? My hope is that my personal brand, my authority brand, what does it do? It shares generously authority. It talks about branding and it gives you simple, actionable ways to look at and transform your brand and grow your business. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel deserving, accomplished, confident. Those things in and of themselves are not differentiating, right? I would hope that any brand strategist would offer similar emotional benefits. Yet companies every day, and you're going to start looking for this in the marketing that you consume out there in the world, companies every day are marketing on the benefits of confidence, peace of mind, my favorite one, quality. Human beings rarely have the faculties to discern what is high quality versus low quality, right? The best brands in the world are fully self-actualized. They get to the top of this pyramid. How do you get to the top of this pyramid? Sorry, I'm moving ahead here. These are the self-expressive benefits. Remember, I told you the best brands in the world are the ones that become part of the people who use them and they elevate their lifestyle. These are the self-expressive benefits. This is where brands align with people's values and beliefs. I asked earlier what brands people were irrationally loyal to. Paul typed into the chat box, Yeti. Yeti is a lifestyle brand that just happens to sell coolers and insulated cups and now dog supplies. And, you know, Yeti could put its brand on anything and people would buy it because it becomes part of the user, right? So your brand's job is to get to the top of this pyramid. How do you do this? I'm going to unlock the mystery for you by telling you the 3 questions you need to ask to create this brand narrative that describes the top of your pyramid. Are you ready? All right, number 1. What does it say about your customer that they use your brand? In the world of authority, what does it say about the person who reads your book? What does it say about the person who attends your speaking event? What does it say about the person who consistently opens your email subscription or they read your blog? What does it say about them? Answer that question. That gets to the self-expressive benefits. Second question, what's the one thing that customers get from you that they don't get from anyone else? This really digs deep into this area of singularity. What makes your brand unique? What is making your brand irreplaceable and indispensable? I run a marketing agency. There are a million other people. There are probably 150 other companies that are headquartered in Austin, Texas. I mean, you can't swing a cat around your head and not hit somebody without finding someone who does exactly what I do in the world of B2B strategy-led marketing, right? Yet the one thing that someone gets from my company that they don't get from anyone else is the proverbial kick in the ass. We aren't just a company that takes orders for people. We're going to push you because our goal is to take a disruptive dark horse brand and make it a top 5 global brand. That means you have to be ready for transformative change. What's the one thing customers get from you that they don't get from anyone else? And then finally, remember at the beginning, I said, you're doing it wrong. If you open your company webpage and the first word is the word we, or your company name, you're not making the customer the hero in his or her own story. You do not get to be the hero if you're going to build an authority brand. Authority is not about you, it's about them. Brand is not about you, it's about them. So just going back on these questions real quick, if you do nothing else in branding, just answer these 3 questions. What does it say about that ideal customer that they use your brand? What's the one thing they get from you that they don't get from anyone else? This is about irreplaceability and indispensability. And finally, how do you make them the hero? How do you get them the win? Right? This will transform the way that you think about your brand. The way that I used to think about my brand was I have branding expertise to share. It's actionable. It's simple. It's not academic. It is research verified and validated. And it's a predictive methodology. Do you think anybody wants to buy that? No, people are really not interested in that. They're really interested in how does this make me a metric buttload of money, right? I'm gonna skip the brand archetypes thing. We'll do a whole new webinar on that. So I said before that negative reciprocity is killing authority and it's saturating the market with crap. How much crap do you see out there on the internet? How much crap comes into your email? I receive probably close to 300 emails a day, and I would say 298 of them are utter crap, right? And based on some research that was conducted by Edelman PR back in 2021, here's some facts for you about authority and about content. So 66% of business purchase influencers say that the pandemic spawned a huge increase in the amount of thought leaders. But 38% of people say there is more thought leadership content than they can imagine. Just let that sit there for a second. So more than 2/3 of business purchase influencers are like, yeah, there's a ton of thought leaders out there. There's way too much for me to manage. Almost 40% of them say that there's way too much for me to manage, right? So you get a picture. Real thought leadership. So this is about just general thought leadership, but real thought leadership has a point of view. I follow a number of people that I am constantly tuning in to hear their point of view. They're not just sharing content with me. That's bottom of the pyramid stuff, right? They're sharing unique content with me that has a point of view that's important to me. Remember the stats that I showed about authority at the beginning and about brand? Brand says something that's important to me. Real thought leadership has a point of view. And thought leadership is not a vehicle to sell shit, right? Those stats that I showed you from the Edelman PR study, 66% of business purchase influencers say that like, wow, there are a whole lot of thought leaders out there. The thought leadership is largely a vehicle to sell shit. Do you guys know it when you see it? Most of the time you do, right? You know, somebody's like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, right? And then buy my course, buy my course, buy my course. Real thought leadership is based in a foundation of authority. So I'm going to just go through some stuff about sharing with authority. So some facts for you. Looking at Backlinko back from 2021, they measured this is a really important and startling fact, but they measured how much of the content on the internet is seen by anybody. 90% of it is not seen by anyone. 90% of the content on the internet is not seen by anyone. So the 10% of the content that we are seeing on the internet is overwhelming, and a lot of it is like a vehicle to sell shit, right? How many times have you typed into Google, how do I tie a tie? And then you get an ad for buying ties, right? Thought leadership and authority is not a vehicle to sell shit, and only 10% of the content is seen by anybody. So you have a better chance as an authority of getting into astronaut training than of becoming a YouTube star. How many of you have thought about like, I wonder if I could get 1 million followers on YouTube? Yeah, you might be able to, but you have a better chance of being in the astronaut training program with NASA than becoming a YouTube star. You are also more likely to experience one of the following. Your house catches on fire this year. You are hospitalized for food poisoning. You get hit by lightning in your lifetime. You have a better chance of getting hit by lightning than becoming a YouTube star. Or you get injured by a chainsaw this year. One of my clients who I work with on authority marketing is a chainsaw artist. She has a higher chance than anybody. But if you think you're going to become a YouTube star, I have news for you. Probably not, right? So you need a strategy and a plan, right? You need to know what is the end goal. Remember, I told you need to establish your authority brand. Who's your ideal customer? How do you become part of their self-image? How do you elevate them and make them a hero in their own story? How do you share something with them that they can't get from anyone else? You need a strategy and a plan. You're not sharing to everybody. You're not just like turning on your microphone and your ring light and talking to everybody in the world, as I am doing right now. You need to have an end goal in mind. So you need to understand, like, what am I trying to do? What is my BHAG? So this is a lot of the business strategy planning stuff. I'm a huge fan of Jim Collins. You can go read his stuff. I don't need to talk about this now, but what is your decade dream? Like, what is it that you are trying to create as a change in this world? And more importantly, what does it look like when you get there? My goal, my end goal is I want to inspire 1 million brands and through that create $100 billion worth of value out of those million brands, right? What's the end goal, right? I want to inspire 1 million brands. What's your point of view? What's your shtick? I'm all about the irrational loyalty, right? If you read any media interview I've ever done, you've attended a speaking engagement, you sat through one of these webinars, you've read anything that I've written, a book or whatever, I always talk about this idea of irrational loyalty. What is your one thing? How many people do you need to impact over what period of time? I'm going to 1 million people over 10 years. I know that I'm about halfway there. And I also know that through my company, Soul Marketing, I work with like 40 or 50 B2B brands a year. That's it. That's only 40 brands. My goal is 1 million brands in 10 years. How do I get to 1 million? Well, that means I need to write books that thousands and thousands of people read. That means I need to speak to business leaders who can share this message and take it back to their organizations. That means that I have to do media. I need to be in interviews in Fortune. I need to submit op-eds to Salon that millions of eyeballs are going to read so that I can impact those people. And it's over that 10-year period. What are you credible, able, and willing to do? At the beginning, I was willing and able to do almost anything. Speak in front of the Girl Scout troop if that's what it took. Go to the school if that's what it took. I give away every year hundreds and hundreds of books just to share my message with other people. I am not looking for anything from people in return. I am just giving to them generously. And then what can I reasonably spend on impacting these people, right? If you want to become an authority, be prepared to spend money on giving. And then also, you need to think about who's creating and activating that content. Remember, I said when you're ready to be an authority, you're ready to throw down and like create all that content or partner with people who can write and produce in your voice to get the content out there. You need a plan for all of this. And how are you going to do this if you are the CEO of a company, which many of you are? I know Ami's audience, almost everybody is. How are you going to do that and do your full-time job? Right? These are all things to think about. Yet so many people are like, I'm going to become a YouTube star or I'm going to write a book. Well, how is that going to serve you? These were all the things that back in 2016, when I wrote my first book and it came to market, I hadn't thought through. I just was lucky. When you think about monetizing authority, when I talk about monetizing authority, what this means is how are you going to make money off of your authority? We're not all doing this 100% out of the goodness of our hearts, right? At some point, we do want this to come back to us. And so I talked about all these things on this previous page here, developing a strategy and a plan, thinking through like, what does the future look like, setting your 3 to 5 year targets, setting your financial goals, setting your audience goals, defining like what the products are, what's the product rollout strategy. Your authority is a business, right? And so when you are trying to figure out, how do I want this authority to serve you? When I first started out, like trying to be an authority, or I was an accidental authority, it was really about how do I bring more clients to Soul Marketing? That was really it. So on this grid here, this graph, when you look at on the bottom is the time it takes. So on the x-axis is the time it takes, less to more time. On the y-axis is generic content to highly personalized content. And then the money from client, which is the monetization potential. If you look at what's up and to the right up there, it's highly personalized, takes more time kind of content in order to monetize, right? The ultimate up here is the stuff. It's going to take the most time. It's going to monetize the most highly. It's probably the most profitable, but the problem is it takes the most time. Right. And so when you're building an authority strategy to monetize, I've laid out like sort of the things to think about in each of these different monetization categories. So down here in the more generic, takes less time, but also you can't charge a whole lot for them, are things like books. I sell books for $15.99 each. My royalty checks like wouldn't even buy me a pair of shoes every month at this point, right? You don't make a whole lot of money off of books unless you become a New York Times bestseller. Becoming a New York Times bestseller really involves you like doing some payola to some people. I don't know if you guys know that, but I have learned that because I have somebody trying to acquire a contract on one of my books to like try to make me a New York Times bestseller. Ebooks, these are really cheap to make. You can't charge a lot for them, right? Have you ever bought an ebook? I've sold ebooks for like $9.97. The most I've ever sold one for was like $27. These are things create it once, syndicate to many, right? These are usually the things that are things that you can give away. Email, you can give it away for free, right? It doesn't monetize very much. Lead magnets, these are things like, you know, swipe files and downloadables, and here's a checklist, or here's the Irrational Loyalty Index report that I was telling you about earlier, etc. Organic social media. This is a way for you to share content. It's not highly customized to one person, but it's generalized to lots of people. It doesn't monetize very highly, but it also doesn't take whole lot of time to create. Often you have to start off down here doing these things in order to earn your chops so that you can get to the more highly monetizable things. I heard a story once. I got to participate as a speaker in this big mastermind for digital marketers one year. And one of the benefits of being a speaker there was I got to stay for the entire mastermind. These are people who have, I kid you not, 9 and 10 figure information product funnels, meaning these are people who are selling courses and files and masterminds and coaching and video series and online things and charging for webinars and whatever. And they are making hundreds of millions of dollars. One of the guys who was speaking there was sharing very vulnerably his story about building a business around training people to find and outfit and turn homes into working vacation rental businesses, like build your own Airbnb business, right? This guy bankrupted himself, his mother, lost his whole family, and like broke up a bunch of really, really important business relationships by spending every cent he had and every cent he didn't have by building courseware on how to establish an Airbnb business. What he did was he put it out there to the world and nobody bought it. Nobody bought it. Why? Because, why am I going backwards here? If you build it, will they come? Not necessarily. He did not have an audience of people who he had given to generously before he dropped on them an ad to buy his course for $1,995. He didn't sell a single one, right? That really, really stuck with me. I was like, why didn't this work? Well, he shared why it didn't work. He didn't have anyone to sell it. He didn't have anyone to sell it to. So this is what you do to monetize authority. First of all, define the platform. Where are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? What are the things? Remember the graph that I showed you? What are the information products? How much of the free stuff are you going to create? And how are you going to use it to cultivate community? It's the community that gives you authority. You don't give yourself authority. You have to cultivate a community. So define the platform. Where are you going to create that community? My community largely lives on LinkedIn. There's like 10,000 people on LinkedIn who follow me. But most importantly, I have a huge email subscription list. Thousands and thousands of people who are like tuning in to get an email from me every other week. oddly. That's the platform. Define the culture. The culture is it's fresh, it's fun, it has Deb's point of view, it curses, it's Deb's brand. You know, I did write a book that has the word sex and laid in the title. I mean, that's what you're going to get when you come here. But the culture also is I am giving to you, right? So you define the platform, define the culture, give, give, give. You see it's there 3 times. I'd add another give. Create a culture of giving and sharing. Like ask other people to give. Ami at Multifunding is doing this right now. This is a guy who gives and gives and gives to his community. He creates a culture of giving and sharing. I wouldn't be here in front of this audience if it weren't for Multifunding, who sponsored this. Make sure you merchandise the right content. I spoke at a Multifunding webinar, I think a month ago, and I think I was just talking about general brand building. Right now, what the community is telling me they need is like, how do I become an authority? Merchandise the right content and then offer personalized support, which is something that I offer to everybody. Every time I do a speaking engagement, a webinar or share or whatever, I give away my phone number, my email address. You can text me, you can call me, you can send me smoke signal, whatever. I will talk to anybody who wants to put themselves on my calendar. I'm going to give you some homework to do before you do it, but I will talk to anybody. So, are you guys ready to do this? This is just the summary of all of this. So authority is not expertise, it's more. It's the catalyst for creating this condition that I call irrational loyalty. And remember, irrational loyalty where people are so indelibly bonded to your brand that they feel like they were cheating on you if they were to choose an alternative. It's where you become the Coke to someone's Pepsi. Authority is portable. It is something that you take with you out of your job and into your life. When you look at big moves inside of companies, when somebody becomes, a well-known CEO becomes the CEO of another company, look at Elon Musk. He has portable authority. He can take it everywhere, right? Mark Benioff, for instance, who's the founder of Salesforce, he can take that authority into anywhere. He doesn't work actively in the business anymore, but he has a platform where he's generously sharing with the world the changing nature of the world of work, right? So it comes with you. What are you compelled to share? What do you absolutely have to share with people that you're jumping out of your seat every day to make sure that they know? You need to go through the process of defining your authority brand. I taught you sort of the basics of branding. Aim your brand at an ideal customer, become part of them, be singular, make them the hero. Have a unique point of view in content. Make sure that your content is not generalizable to the whole world. Don't use Chat GPT to create your authority content. Have a unique point of view. You guys know my point of view. It's a little sassy. It's a little, subversive, all of that kind of stuff. Have a unique point of view in content. Define your goals. What am I trying to get to? 1 million brands in 10 years. Therefore, what's the plan to getting there? And how do I want that to serve me? And build the plan. This is just like starting a company, you guys. Build the plan for monetization, both in the short term and the long term. Pick the platform you want to own where you're going to create community. And then it's the community, stupid. Cultivate that community by generously giving to that community over and over again. And as I said, something that I do is I tell everyone, I will talk to anybody. Please, please, please reach out. You can use my phone number. You can text me. Just tell me where we met, or email me, debgabor.com. You can go to my website. I give a ton of resources away for free. So you can download worksheets. There's an ideal customer worksheet. There's the 3 brand questions worksheet. There's a brand values pyramid worksheet. There are a whole bunch of resources for you there if you want to do some DIY. You can buy a book or whatever. But anyway, let's start something. Authority starts today. So we are a couple minutes beyond the end of our time. I just want to see, does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to know? Y'all know where to get me? Allie, do we have any questions or observations from the LinkedIn Live?
So there's no questions, but great observations, good feedback saying that the LinkedIn is great. And yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. I want to thank everybody for their time. So go forth and prosper. You can read the book Personality, all of this stuff and more. It's like a really, really big book. The first half of the book is really all about what is authority, how to identify authority, how to create authority. The second half of the book is all about creating an authority monetization platform business, if that is something that you're interested in. So it's called Person-ality. cultivating your human authority for irrational brand loyalty or something like that. I don't know. My publisher came up with that title. It's so long, I can't say it. But anyway, thank you all for being here today, and I hope to see you soon. Please do feel free to reach out. It was lovely seeing everybody, and take care.
Thanks, Deb. This was a great webinar.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.